Hey everyone, this is Kevin with Divinely Designed. Hey everybody. And today I'm going to do a liquid soap video. I have never made liquid soap, so you are following along with me on my very first attempt. And I have to say, in reading about liquid soap, I actually found it a little bit sort of overwhelming for a little bit, just trying to figure out how to formulate it and neutralizing and sequestering, and it seemed like a very, different beastie than cold process soap. But I'm interested in it, and I'm always excited to learn new things. So we'll walk through it, and if I fail, I fail, and hopefully you'll learn along with me. Okay, so first off, let's talk a little bit about formulating our recipe and sort of what our goal is. Our goal is to make, or my goal, is to make a liquid soap that is crystal clear, but still has a nice viscosity to it. Like it's not real thin and runny. It has a little bit of body to it, right? That's my ultimate goal. Now I see there's lots of liquid soap videos out there, and they make great liquid soap, but they always turn out with this sort of amber color. Some of them are very amber colored, almost like a wheat beer, or like a medium bodied beer. That's the color of most of the liquid soaps I see. And there's nothing wrong with that, apparently. I mean, that doesn't affect the use of the soap. But what I'm going for is crystal clear. Like, if this comes out perfect, it will look like water. That would be my goal, but be thick. Okay, so in order to do that, I needed to craft my recipe a very specific way. So when we're looking at hard oils, and I should mention that a lot of the help or sort of information I get is from a book called Making Natural Liquid Soaps by Catherine Failer, and there's actually a Kindle version available on Amazon. So that book was super helpful in giving me information and helping me to learn how to formulate my recipe. And there's a Facebook group called Liquid Soap Making, and full of great people who are really helpful, files, recipes, all that kind of stuff. So a shout out to that group and Vivian, who I think is the owner of that group. Okay, so formulating my recipe, in terms of hard oils, most of the hard oils are formulated or comprised of stearic, palmic, and lauric acids. However, since we're going to be using potassium hydroxide in here, the potassium hydroxide interacts with palmic and stearic acids and forms insoluble soaps, which can lead to a cloudy liquid soap. Lauric acid, however, is very soluble, and so you get much less potential for cloudiness. So the hard oils like palm oil or tallow, let's say, they're very high in the stearic and palmitic acids, but coconut oil is very high in the lauric acid without being as high in stearic or palmitic acids. So that's my choice, and that's why you see it sort of as a very frequent oil in liquid soap making recipes. So coconut oil is going to form sort of the backbone of my recipe. In terms of soft oils, which tend to be high in the oleic, linoleic, and linoleic acids, they can provide moisturizing, but they tend to be low foaming or maybe low lathering. And a good choice here is olive oil or almond oil, which both happen to be high in oleic, and they are both very low in terms of palmitic or stearic acids. So I'm going to have some olive and some almond oil in here. Oh, and I should mention that in addition to the coconut oil, another oil that's very high in lauric but low in stearic or palmitic is babassu oil. And so I've added a little bit of that to my recipe. And then finally, let's talk about castor. Castor oil is kind of in a category all to itself because it's part oil and it's part alcohol. So it's 90% ricinoleic acid, which can add emollient properties and moisturizing qualities to it. But then it has an alcohol component, which is good for us because the alcohol can act as a solvent and help to provide exceptional clarity to our soap. So, with that all in mind, let's go over the formula. So here in my crock pot, I have my oils, which is on low, and they've been just melting. So I have, and this is a pretty small recipe, so I have 119 grams of coconut oil, 10 grams of babassu oil, 26 grams of olive oil, 79 grams of sweet almond oil, 26 grams of castor oil, and 3 grams of jojoba oil. Now, jojoba, as many of you probably know, is a wax, right? Although its natural state is a liquid. Now, I went back and forth on putting jojoba in here. It's such a small amount, and the issue is that jojoba, while really great for your skin, contains lots of unsaponifiables, and that would cause a cloudy soap. So, you know, I debated taking it out, but I thought it's such a small amount. I like the qualities that it's going to add to this recipe, so I left it in. Sort of in the end, it was not quite a scientific decision, but more of an emotional one. I just think having jojoba in here will add something to it. So, okay. Now, in terms of my lye and water, I am doing this as a 2-lye method. So in here I have both potassium and sodium hydroxide. The amounts of each are 39 grams of potassium hydroxide and 17 grams of sodium hydroxide. And for 1 minute, let's do a little bit of math. So let's go to the computer. Okay, everyone, so let's take a look at the calculations we're doing to make our liquid soap. So I've gone to Soap Calc, and I've plugged in my recipe: coconut, babassu, olive oil, almond, castor, and jojoba. And you can see my percentage breakdown here. The majority of my liquid soap is going to be a coconut oil-based soap with some other oils to sort of balance things out. Now I've selected sodium hydroxide as my lye that I'm going to work with first. I'm setting my superfat to 0, and then I'm going to click on Calculate Recipe and view the recipe itself. So here you can see my sodium hydroxide amount turns out to be 41.922. Now remember that. Our water is going to be 100.7. Let's look at the potassium portion of the formula. So I'm not changing anything, except I'm going to come back up here to Soap Calc and I'm going to click on potassium hydroxide. Now I'm also going to click on this box right beneath it that says 90% potassium hydroxide. The reason we do this is that most potassium hydroxide is not pure, and so if we didn't select that, this calculator would assume your potassium hydroxide is 100%. And if you had 100% potassium hydroxide, you'd actually be saponifying more oils. But because it's not pure, you don't saponify as many oils, and because unsaponified oils lead to cloudy liquid soap, we want to make sure to take account for that. So I'm selecting the 90% potassium hydroxide checkbox. I'm going to recalculate my recipe and then view that recipe. Okay, so based on my 90% pure potassium hydroxide, I need 65.328 grams of potassium hydroxide. Now, let's take a look at the math then. So, don't be scared, just a little bit of math. Now, remember how I talked about the potassium hydroxide not being pure? Sodium hydroxide varies as well. I get my sodium hydroxide from the Lye guy, and his site lists that the sodium hydroxide is somewhere between 96 and 100% pure. Now, I'm not sure of the actual purity of it unless I were to sort of test it. So I'm going to make kind of an educated guess here and maybe go with 98% pure, right in the middle. So what I did was add to my amount, this was the total amount that soap calculated, right? 41.922, and I'm adding a gram to that to come with a total of 42.922. Now, how did I come up with 1 gram? Well, I went back to soap calc. I looked at my sodium hydroxide recipe with a 0% superfat, and when I calculated it, if you remember, we got 41.922. I then went back and changed it to a 2% superfat, recalculated my recipe, and looked at the difference here. So now I have 41.088. So the difference being almost a gram. Okay, I'm kind of rounding a little bit, but so that 2% difference representing a gram. So that's why I'm adding that, to try and make sure, again, that I'm saponifying all of the oils and not leaving any oils unsaponified, thus resulting in a cloudy liquid soap. So my total amount of sodium hydroxide that I should have used is 42.922 if I were only using sodium hydroxide. The total amount of potassium hydroxide, if I were only using potassium hydroxide, was 65.328. But now I'm going to take a portion of each of those, right? So my percentage breakout total is 100. I'm going to take 60% from the potassium and 40% from the sodium. And here's how that worked out. So my total amount of sodium from above was 42.922. I'm going to multiply that by 4, which is going to give me 17.169, which I'm going to round to 17 grams. Same with my potassium, 65.328. I'm only going to take a portion of that, right? 60% of it, so I'm going to multiply it by 0.6, which gives me 39.197, which I'm going to round to 39. So 17 grams of sodium hydroxide and 39 grams of potassium hydroxide. Okay, let's get back to soaping. Okay, so we're back. So hopefully that all makes sense to you as to why I chose those two, those amounts and how I calculated it. In here, the total amount of water called for is 100 grams of water, and I'm using distilled water. But I actually only have 50 grams of water in here, and I'm using 50 grams of vegetable glycerin as well. Glycerin, there is a glycerin method, so I guess this is technically not the glycerin method because in the glycerin method you replace all of your water with glycerin. I'm only replacing half of it. It helps to speed up the saponification process, and glycerin should also add, you know, it's a humectant and should hopefully add some qualities to our soap. And remember, this is calculated to be a 0% superfat because any unsaponified oils are going to contribute to a cloudy soap, and we don't want that in my goal here, my liquid soap. And then in this little bottle here, I have 10 grams of 91% alcohol, which I'm going to add to this as well. Alcohol, again, to help to the clarity, and you don't really have to worry about alcohol ending up in your liquid soap because it's going to cook out here. Okay. All right. So first, let's add our lye and I gotta get a little spatula. Okay. All right. Alright, so I'm going to mix this up until it's all dissolved and it's much more clear than this, and we'll be right back, so stay tuned. Okay, we're back, and this is close. This is very close to being all good. And I forgot to mention one thing. In her book, Catherine Villard kind of talks about the soft oils not really being so important because of the way they saponify. I don't know that I go that far with it. I mean, I think, you know, different oils can bring different qualities to the soap. I guess the point she's making is because it's sort of 0% super fat, they're all being saponified anyway. But the one thing that you do want to consider, again, because my goal is this crystal clear soap, even though I'm using olive oil, I'm using the lightest olive oil I could find. I actually went out to the store and just bought this little bottle of extra light olive oil specifically for this purpose of making this soap. Again, because my goal is a very clear, crystal clear kind of soap. Okay, so let's get this a little closer here, and then we'll add our lye, water, and glycerin mixture. Now, liquid soap apparently takes much longer to go through the saponification process, and in the glycerin method, that's why I think the glycerin method is so popular. You'll see lots of videos out there about it, is because the glycerin helps that to speed up some. So, okay. That. Give this a little mix here. I'm going to add my little bit of alcohol as well. Okay. And now a little bit of a blend with my stick blender. So you can see we have thickened up some here. Hopefully you can see that. We're kind of at applesauce kind of phase. So this does get very thick to the point where it's, you know, pretty difficult to stir with a stick blender. So I'm gonna scrape off this soapy goodness here, and then switch over just to some manual mixing, but it's pretty thick now. So this is very much like a hot process, but we're going to keep cooking this for a while. Well, you would in hot process too. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to just finish scraping out this soap, and then we're going to let it cook for a while. I'm going to continue to stir it. That's important. Making sure you come back and you stir your soap here. And then we're just going to continue to cook, and I'm going to turn the camera off because there's no need for you guys to suffer through that. And we'll check back in a little while. Okay, so stay tuned. Okay, folks, it has been almost exactly 3 hours. And you can see it's still, it did not turn to like a Vaseline stage, which some have. I mean, I've seen that, but I don't think that's a bad thing because of using the two different lyes. It's very pudding-like here, but as soon as I remove it from the heat, it does firm up. So what I'm going to do now, I can kind of show you that, like, even as I get it out of here, it starts to harden up pretty quickly. Okay, so I did do a clarity test. I'm sorry I didn't film that, but a clarity test is I just took out a small bit of it, put it in some boiling water, and sort of stirred it around to make sure it wasn't like milky or cloudy, and it's not. It came back clear. So what I'm going to do now is take it out, and I have a glass measuring bowl here. I'm going to weigh my soap, and then we need to dilute it. Now, here's the thing. I'm a little unclear on the dilution thing. So, I actually don't know how much I should be diluting it. So, we're going to see. The dilution ratios for soap is something like 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, and it depends on, you know, kind of the composition of your liquid soap. So I'm going to start with 2-to-1 and do just a little bit of an experiment here. Okay, turn that off. Okay, so what I have is 358 grams of soap paste. So, let me just, you know what, let me try, I'm gonna add 358 grams of water, and that would be 1-to-1. I have some, this is fresh out of the microwave, it's boiling water. Okay, that's close to 358. Okay, so I'm just gonna stir this around for a bit, and I'm gonna turn off the camera, I guess, while I do that, and then we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, stay tuned. Okay, well, it became apparent very quickly that using that bowl and just pouring in the hot water wasn't going to work. So you can see I've broken up the soap paste that I have and just sort of chunked it up, put it back in my crock pot, and I actually have my crock pot on high for right now, just to heat everything up, and I'm going to stir it and just until it gets hot a little bit, and then I'll probably turn it back to low. And so I was cooking for 3 hours, and then I also added another 358 grams of water. So right now I have a 2-to-1 ratio of water to soap paste, and we'll see how this works. It was foaming up very nicely here, and I spritzed it with some alcohol just so you can kind of see what's going on. So, okay. In the meantime, I have prepared a 33% borax solution. It's 3 ounces of borax in 6 ounces of boiling water, and just mixed it up. We'll be using this potentially as a thickening agent, and also as a neutralizer, and we'll see. I may not need it, but I've already just pre-mixed it and sort of made it ready to go. I could also test just to see what my pH is here right now. Now this is very thin, so we'll see. I don't know if it will stay like, these soap chunks obviously I need to dissolve. I don't know how much thicker that will make it though. But just for fun, let's see where, I don't really normally use these strips, and I think phenolphthalein would actually work better, but this is all I have. Okay, so I'd say we're right at 8 or 9, which is right where it should be. Normally the liquid soap, or so I've read, ends up with a pH of a finished liquid soap with a pH between 9 and 10, and that's okay. So anyway, alright, I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to cover it and let it sit for a while, and then we'll be back. Hey everyone, okay, so we're back. 8, 9. So I let this cook in my crock pot here. It's been about 5 hours now. So it's all dissolved, and I turned off the heat just now, and I think I'm going to let this sit overnight and see how it does, and then see what the viscosity looks like when it's all cooled. So I did add just a few little squirts, about probably about 6 cc's of my borax solution, just to give it hopefully a little bit of thickening. I don't know if you can see though, it is forming a skin on top pretty quickly. So I think that means I probably need to dilute it some more. So, okay. Alright. Well, I think that's it for now. I turned off the heat, and I think I'm gonna pour it into a different container, probably my glass measuring cup and then let it sit. Okay, check back for an update in a minute. Okay folks, it's the next day and you can see that my liquid soap is pretty liquidy. It has a little bit of thickness to it, but it's pretty runny. And the color is definitely amber. Now, let me see if I can get a little better picture of this. So it's definitely not my crystal clear water I was looking for. It's okay. It feels like it might be okay though. So I want to thicken it up. I was going to use borax, and I actually did squirt a little bit of that 33% borax in last night, but it didn't seem to do a whole lot. I have seen on YouTube somebody thicken it with a salt solution. So this is very unscientific of me, but I just poured a bunch of salt in it's probably about 3 tablespoons in about 150 cc's of water. So I'm just going to try and add a little bit of that. And I know this also might cloud things up a little bit here. It looks like egg drop soup. I may have to stick blend this a little bit. Or heat it up maybe. Maybe that's what I'll do. The salt makes some of the soap precipitate out here, I think. So we'll try heating it up a little bit. Okay, stay tuned. Okay, so I heated it up and I added the remaining salt solution I had, and it definitely feels thicker. It's still, it's still pretty liquid, but adding that salt definitely helped. And it's very warm still right now, so I think I'm just going to let it sit and cool. And but I think I should be done. And the salt solution actually lightened it up a little bit too. It is still definitely amber. And the one thing I want to say is, I think some of that amber color came because of the heat. I turned my crock pot to high for a while at one point, and I think that probably affected the color of the oils. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, like when you're cooking, right, and you add oils to a hot pan, it changes the color of the oils. So I bet you if I had controlled the heat a lot better and done a lot more gentle heating of this, I could have gotten it to stay much more clear and water-like as opposed to amber. So, okay, I'm going to let this cool. I'm going to add some fragrance too, I think. I'm not sure what fragrance I want to add. But I'm going to let it cool down before I do that too. Okay, so check back for the final results, I think. Okay, so it's cooled down. It's still just a little bit warm. So I think it'll... But the thickness is pretty good, I'm feeling. It's, I think I'd like it a little bit thicker, but that's not bad. Okay, so I'm going to fragrance it. I have a mixture here. This is just something I mixed up, so it's got a whole bunch of essential oils in it. It's got Japanese peppermint, ylang ylang, blood orange, litsi, grapefruit, a little bit of star anise. I think that's it. So it's got a very citrusy, sort of citrusy and floral fragrance. I'm not sure exactly how much to add here, so I'm just going to mix that in. Oh, and fragrance oils, I'm sure, can do things to your liquid soap, I've read. Wow, look at that. That made it super cloudy. Oh, and you know what? I've read that citrus oils, essential oils, can cloud your liquid soap. Darn it, I should have taken a picture of this beforehand. I think it needs more though. And the citrus oils, I mean the fragrance oils or essential oils that you use can also affect the thickness of your soap. And I think this is actually thickening it up some, which is a good thing. That smells nice. Well, unfortunately it got cloudy though. But some of this, I mean, some of the cloudiness may, if we let it just sit for a while, it may be okay. I think I'm going to add a little bit more. Okay, so I think that's going to be about it. I'm going to let this sit. Now, they say you should let this sequester, which is just letting it sit around for a little while. And some of this cloudiness may improve, and it may get more clear. It may not. You can also add things when you are sequestering it to help thicken it. You can add, I think you can add alcohol, you could add sugar, you can add glycerin. All of those things could help with the thickness or the clarity as you let it sort of sit and mellow. But it is usable right now. So let me, hold on, let me see if I can, well, maybe we should test it before I go. Hold on. Okay, so here we go. Give it a little test. Oh, it's warm. Oh, that works good. Look at that. Lots of good lather. It feels nice. So yeah, lots of good lather there. Okay. Smells so good. Okay, so I'm really happy with the thickness now. I mean, it's a good viscosity, I think. You know, it became amber colored, and now it got cloudy with the addition of the essential oils. So, you know, I didn't get my goal, but I think it's a lovely liquid soap overall. I have some cute bottles I made up. I just put little tags on, so I'm going to fill a couple of these, and I'm going to put it by my sink, and one's probably going to go to my mom, and that's about it. Okay, so there is Kevin's first liquid soap. So what do you guys think? How did I do? What would you suggest? And comments, questions, leave them below. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, click that subscribe button. Okay, thanks very much. Check back here at Divinely Designed for more bath and beauty related videos. Bye, y'all.